I've been running my own business for about 3 years now, and it has been a roller coaster. It's not the success story that most people imagine when they think of entrepreneurs. In fact, it's been a constant grind, with far more setbacks than victories. But I'll take you through it all because I believe it's the kind of story that a lot of people can relate to. Maybe it'll help someone who's struggling or doubting themselves to push through. It all started when I was in my mid-20s. I was working a standard 9-to-5 job at a digital marketing firm. It was good money, but the work was draining. I was surrounded by people who loved what they did, but I didn't. I was never passionate about it, and I knew there was something else I could be doing. I always had ideas for businesses, mostly small-scale side hustles. Some were ideas I wanted to start, and others were just things I thought might work for someone else. But none of them took off because I lacked the confidence and knowledge to bring them to life. I had a small blog at the time. It wasn't very popular, but I enjoyed writing. One day, I wrote a post about how to balance a 9-to-5 job while trying to launch a side business. The post got more attention than I expected. It went viral, not in the internet-famous way, but it got shared in a few different online groups, and people started reaching out. A few people wanted to know how I made the time to balance everything, and others asked if I could help them set up their own businesses. That post sparked something in me. For the first time, I realized that maybe I wasn't the only one who felt like they needed more. I wasn't ready to quit my job, but the idea of helping others start their own businesses stuck with me. I started taking more online courses on business development, marketing, and web design in my spare time. For the first time, I was truly excited to learn. It was like a light bulb clicked on. I knew what I had to do. A few months later, I had a plan. I started offering coaching services to people who wanted to start online businesses. I called it side hustle coaching. I built a website, created a few packages, and began advertising on social media. At first, I only had a handful of clients, but that was enough to keep me going. The work was fulfilling, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something that could actually grow. However, things weren't all rosy. I didn't anticipate how difficult it would be to manage clients while working full-time. There were nights where I barely slept because I was trying to juggle everything. I remember spending hours researching and creating content for my clients, while at the same time, I was trying to keep up with my job. I felt like I was running on empty all the time, but I kept telling myself that if I just kept pushing through, it would eventually pay off. After 6 months, I hit a wall. I wasn't making enough money from the coaching business to quit my full-time job, and I was exhausted. I decided to take a step back and evaluate my options. I didn't want to give up on the dream, but I knew I had to be realistic. That's when I made one of the most important decisions of my career. I decided to niche down. Instead of trying to be everything to everyone, I focused solely on helping people launch e-commerce businesses. I figured that if I could master one aspect of business, I could scale it faster and more efficiently. At first, it was a hard sell. A lot of potential clients didn't know the difference between dropshipping, creating digital products, or running a service-based e-commerce business. They wanted a quick solution, but I started educating them through free webinars and blog posts. Slowly but surely, people began to see the value of my expertise, and my client base started to grow. By the end of the first year, I was able to quit my full-time job. It felt surreal. I thought I'd feel a sense of relief or accomplishment, but instead, I felt more pressure than ever. I was now fully responsible for my own livelihood. I had to scale my business, hire a team, and keep my clients happy. The workload tripled, and so did the stress. But I couldn't turn back. I had made the leap, and now there was no option but to make it work. Hiring my first employee was a huge turning point. It was terrifying. I was still unsure of my own stability, so the idea of being responsible for someone else's paycheck felt like a massive risk. But I knew I couldn't do everything myself. I hired a virtual assistant to help with administrative tasks, and it was one of the best decisions I've made. It freed up so much of my time to focus on growing the business. The first hire allowed me to focus on the things I was good at, working with clients and refining the business strategy. Around this time, I also realized I needed to scale in a way that didn't require me to personally work with every single client. I started offering more group coaching sessions and created online courses. I knew that I couldn't continue with one-on-one coaching if I wanted to grow and make more money. It was hard to let go of that personal touch, but it was necessary. The more people I helped, the more I realized that I could make a bigger impact if I could reach more people at once. The courses took off, and by the end of my second year in business, I had a thriving online education platform for aspiring e-commerce entrepreneurs. My team grew to 6 people, including web developers, content creators, and marketing experts. My revenue was finally consistent, and I was able to pay myself a salary that was higher than what I had made in my corporate job. That said, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still plenty of challenges, technical glitches with the website, unhappy clients, and moments of self-doubt. I questioned myself all the time. Am I really cut out for this? Do I have what it takes to keep this business going? But I pushed through. There were moments when it seemed like everything was falling apart, but I always found a way to fix it and move forward. Now, as I'm heading into my 3rd year, my business is in a much better place. We have multiple streams of income, including online courses, coaching programs, and affiliate marketing. I'm in the process of launching a new membership site that will offer ongoing support to people starting their e-commerce businesses. It's been a journey filled with uncertainty, but I'm grateful for everything I've learned along the way. Looking back, I realized that starting a business is not just about having an idea or being good at a certain skill. It's about persistence, adaptability, and a willingness to learn from every setback. The road hasn't been easy, and it still isn't. But I've never been more proud of what I've built, and I'm excited about where it's going. To anyone out there thinking about starting a business, it's going to be tough, and there will be moments when you want to give up. But if you stick with it, keep learning, and adapt to changes, it's possible to build something that you can be proud of. The only failure is quitting. Keep pushing, and you might just surprise yourself. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. I started my journey as an entrepreneur when I was 21 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in marketing. But like most people at that age, I had no idea what I really wanted to do. I had dreams, sure, but no clear plan. I had always been an ambitious kid, the one who dreamed big and constantly tried new things, from selling snacks to neighbors to organizing school events, but I never took it seriously. I was good at talking and persuading people, but that alone wasn't going to make me successful. The real turning point came after I landed my first real job at a digital marketing agency. I was hired as an intern, doing the usual grunt work, managing social media accounts, writing blog posts, and doing some basic SEO work. I hated it. The monotony was unbearable, and I could already feel the walls closing in. I was getting a decent paycheck, sure, but it wasn't fulfilling. The one thing I learned from that job, though, was that I could see opportunities where others didn't. I could tell that the business world was about to change, especially with the rise of social media platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. But my colleagues didn't seem to get it. I spent months brainstorming ideas of how I could leverage these platforms to build something of my own. After work, I would research everything about online businesses, how they started, what worked, what didn't. I was consumed by the idea of being my own boss. One late night, scrolling through Instagram, it hit me. Everyone was obsessed with fitness. People were constantly posting workout routines, meal plans, and transformation pictures. Fitness influencers were popping up everywhere, and I saw an opportunity to capitalize on that. But there was a problem. I wasn't a fitness expert. I didn't have a background in health or wellness. That didn't stop me, though. I figured that if I could find the right people to work with, I could build something. I started reaching out to local trainers and wellness coaches to see if they would be interested in partnering up for a new project. My pitch was simple. Let's create an online fitness platform where people can access personalized workout plans and nutrition guides. Most of them laughed at me. They didn't believe that the online fitness space could be as big as I envisioned it to be. But one personal trainer, Alex, took me seriously. Alex was in his early 30s, well-respected in the fitness community, and had a growing Instagram following. We decided to meet in person to discuss the potential business. We spent hours in a coffee shop, talking about the industry, the audience, and what kind of content would work. Alex was skeptical at first, but after hearing me talk about the business model, he agreed to partner up with me. We both put up $1,000 each to get started, which felt like a lot of money at the time, especially considering we had no real business experience. Our first idea was to create a subscription-based service where users would pay a monthly fee to receive custom workout plans, meal prep guides, and coaching. We called it Fit Together. We spent the next few weeks building a simple website and creating content to attract potential clients. I did most of the marketing and business development, while Alex handled the fitness side. We also started running Instagram ads targeting fitness enthusiasts, but honestly, the results were underwhelming. We were getting a few signups here and there, but nothing substantial. At this point, I was ready to give up. We had spent hours and money on the business, but it felt like no one cared. One day, while I was going through our Instagram analytics, I saw a post from an influencer we had reached out to months before but had never heard back from. Her name was Emily, and she had a following of over 100,000 people. She had posted about how much she loved our workout program, even though she had never signed up for it. The post was genuine, and her followers started flooding into our website. I immediately messaged her, asking if she would be interested in becoming an official brand ambassador. She said yes, and from there, things started to change. Emily not only promoted our platform, but she also created exclusive workout challenges for her followers using Fit Together. We were gaining traction fast, and within a few months, our user base grew from just a few dozen to over 2,000 subscribers. But we didn't stop there. Emily's success inspired us to go bigger. We reached out to more influencers in the health and fitness space, offering them a chance to become ambassadors as well. Slowly but surely, the brand began to grow. We reinvested the revenue back into the business, hiring more trainers and developing better content. We were able to offer more advanced programs, including mental wellness workshops, meditation sessions, and fitness gear. By year 2, we were making enough money to quit our day jobs. The initial struggles were tough, but we had found our groove. The website was becoming more polished, our brand was recognized, and we started to build a community. We launched a mobile app, which allowed users to access the platform on the go, and even introduced live-stream workout sessions where users could interact with trainers in real time. The business began to feel like something more than just an idea. It was becoming a movement. But, like with any success story, the challenges didn't end there. Around year 3, we faced some serious competition. Larger fitness companies started to enter the market, and it became clear that we had to step up our game if we wanted to maintain our position. We decided to pivot slightly, offering not just fitness plans, but also personalized coaching that combined fitness, nutrition, and mental health. This decision turned out to be a game changer. We were able to create an entirely new niche within the fitness industry, and our user base exploded again. In the end, the key to our success was simple: persistence. I wasn't an expert in fitness, but I had a vision, and I was willing to work hard to make it happen. The road was not easy, and I had moments where I seriously doubted myself. But I kept pushing forward, learned from my mistakes, and surrounded myself with people who believed in the idea. Today, Fit Together has over 50,000 active subscribers, and we're still growing. We've expanded into physical products like fitness apparel and accessories, and we've even started a mentorship program for new entrepreneurs in the wellness space. Looking back, I realized that my biggest mistake was almost giving up too soon. There were so many moments where I thought the business wasn't going to make it. But now, I can proudly say that taking the leap into entrepreneurship was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It hasn't been a smooth ride, and it certainly was an instant success. But now, I get to wake up every day and do what I love. I've learned that success doesn't come overnight. It comes through determination, learning from failures, and constantly evolving. If I could go back and tell my 21-year-old self something, it would be this: don't wait for the perfect moment. Start where you are, and don't let fear or failure stop you from chasing your dreams. As an entrepreneur, you will never have everything figured out, but you'll figure it out as you go. And that's the beauty of it. I'm an entrepreneur, but this is a story that's far from what you might think. It's not about the overnight success, the flashy startup culture, or the big break. Instead, it's about what happened when everything went wrong, when I thought I'd lost it all, and how a combination of stubbornness and unexpected opportunities led me to build something that I now look back on with pride. It started about 5 years ago. I was in my late 20s, living in a small apartment in a city that was known for its fast-paced business environment. I had a dream, one that I was determined to chase. I didn't have any rich relatives to bankroll my ideas, and I certainly didn't have any investors lined up. What I did have, though, was an idea and a work ethic that I hoped would carry me through. The idea was simple. I wanted to create an online platform that would connect small businesses with freelance marketers. I knew that there were plenty of talented marketers out there, but many of them struggled to find clients. On the other hand, small businesses often lacked the budget to hire big marketing agencies but still needed help to grow. The market seemed ripe for a platform that could bridge this gap. I spent the first few months building the website. I wasn't a developer, but I was determined. I learned everything I could, pieced together tutorials from YouTube, and started coding late at night after working my 9 to 5. It wasn't pretty, but it was functional. The platform allowed small businesses to post jobs and marketers to bid on them. I called it MarketBridge. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was excited. I launched the platform, set up a basic social media presence, and started reaching out to anyone I knew who might need marketing help. I even offered free services to get the word out. At first, it was slow. Really slow. Like, painfully slow. I didn't get my first job posting for weeks. But finally, a small bakery in a nearby neighborhood posted a job. They were looking for a marketer to help them with social media. I was ecstatic. I worked with the bakery owner, got a few posts made, and even helped with some simple ads. It wasn't groundbreaking work, but it was a start. Over the next few months, things didn't get much better. I had a handful of clients, but it was always a struggle to convince small businesses that they needed a freelancer over a full-time employee. They were hesitant. The platform's user base wasn't growing as fast as I'd hoped. The technology was clunky, and customer support was non-existent. Every day felt like a grind. Then it all came crashing down. I'd invested nearly all of my savings into the platform, but the bills were piling up. I had no revenue stream to speak of, and the stress was getting to me. My personal life started to fall apart too. I was working 16-hour days, trying to grow the platform and keep my head above water, but my relationships with friends and family were strained. After 6 months of this, I had to make a decision. I could keep going, potentially sink more money into this sinking ship, or I could pull the plug and move on. I didn't want to quit. I was too stubborn, but I also knew that I needed help. I started attending local entrepreneurial meetups and pitching my idea to anyone who would listen. It was a humbling experience. Some people laughed at me, others said I'd never make it. But I also met a few people who understood the struggle, who had been there themselves and had come out the other side. One of those people was a developer named Rachel. Rachel had built and scaled several platforms, and after a long chat over coffee, she agreed to help me. She didn't ask for much, just a small equity stake and the chance to be part of something that could actually succeed. Rachel wasn't a magic bullet, but she brought in something I desperately needed: experience. She revamped the website, streamlined the user experience, and helped me set up a proper payment system. We worked together on making the platform more user-friendly. But it wasn't just the technical side that needed work. I also had to change how I approached marketing and sales. Rachel's first piece of advice to me was to stop selling the platform. Instead, she told me, sell the problem you're solving. I had been so focused on building the perfect platform that I had forgotten the core reason businesses would pay for our services. They wanted results. We reworked the messaging, focused on how MarketBridge could help small businesses grow, and started marketing ourselves as a solution to their specific needs. With Rachel's help, we also started offering more targeted services, things like marketing strategy consulting and performance-based pricing, which allowed businesses to pay based on results rather than upfront costs. Suddenly, things started to shift. Businesses began seeing real value in the platform. Our user base grew, slowly at first, and then exponentially. We still faced challenges, hiring the right people, managing cash flow, dealing with technical issues, but we were finally moving in the right direction. 2 years after Rachel came on board, MarketBridge was starting to gain traction. I learned more in those 2 years than I had in the previous 3. We had a dedicated team, a growing customer base, and a business model that was actually sustainable. The true turning point, however, came when a large marketing agency reached out to us. They wanted to partner with us, providing their clients with freelancers from our platform. They saw the value we were offering, and suddenly, we weren't just a small player in the freelance space, we were a contender. That partnership was the break we needed. With a steady stream of clients and a growing reputation, MarketBridge started to flourish. We refined our platform further, made it easier for clients to find the right marketers, and eventually reached a point where we were turning a profit. Today, MarketBridge is a company that supports thousands of freelancers and small businesses. We've expanded beyond marketing and now offer services in several other industries, but we've never lost sight of the original vision: to help businesses thrive by connecting them with the right talent. Looking back, it's clear to me that entrepreneurship isn't about the perfect idea or the perfect execution from the start. It's about perseverance, learning from mistakes, and knowing when to ask for help. I've often thought about what would have happened if I'd given up in those early days, if I hadn't had the courage to keep going after everything fell apart. There are so many factors that contributed to our success: timing, luck, hard work, and a bit of stubbornness. But ultimately, the most important factor was refusing to give up when everything seemed hopeless. If you're reading this and struggling in your own entrepreneurial journey, know that you're not alone. It won't be easy. It will suck at times, and you'll probably want to quit more than once. But keep going. Find help when you need it. Keep learning. And most importantly, don't be afraid to fail. Because sometimes, failure is just a stepping stone to something even better. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. A few years ago, I found myself in a position I never thought I would be in, living in a cramped studio apartment, hustling every single day to make ends meet. I had always dreamed of being my own boss, of building something from the ground up, but that seemed like a distant goal that I would never reach. My friends would talk about the future, about taking vacations, about buying houses, but I was stuck in the present, working long hours at a job that barely covered my bills. I had graduated from college with a degree in marketing, but the reality of the job market hit me hard. Every application I sent out seemed to disappear into the void. The more I tried, the more hopeless it felt. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, just getting by. So, I started brainstorming. I kept asking myself, what can I offer to the world that would make people want to buy it? It all started when I was scrolling through my social media one night, feeling frustrated and desperate for a breakthrough. I noticed that people were constantly posting about lifestyle and self-improvement, particularly about fitness and wellness. There were influencers, fitness coaches, and even online communities that were booming. Suddenly, it hit me. I had been passionate about fitness for years. I was always the person my friends turned to for workout advice. What if I could take my passion and make it into something more? What if I could build a business out of my love for fitness? That night, I decided to take the plunge. I didn't have a huge budget, no fancy equipment, and no marketing team. All I had was my knowledge, my passion, and a burning desire to prove that I could make it. I started small. I launched an Instagram account with the simple goal of sharing fitness tips and workout routines. I wasn't trying to sell anything, just offering value. I posted daily content, from home workout ideas to diet hacks and motivational quotes. It wasn't much, but I believed that if I could help just one person, it would be worth it. The first few months were a grind. My follower count barely moved. There were days when I felt like no one was paying attention to what I was doing. But then, something amazing happened. People started reaching out, asking for personalized workout plans or nutrition advice. At first, I offered everything for free. I wanted to build trust and prove that I could deliver results. Slowly but surely, I started to gain more followers, and more people began asking for my expertise. By month 4, I had my first paying client. It wasn't much, but it was proof that what I was doing was working. I spent hours crafting personalized fitness plans, answering emails, and fine-tuning my approach. I was working full-time at my regular job during the day and running my fitness business at night and on weekends. I didn't mind the lack of sleep or the long hours. The work was fulfilling in a way that my 9-to-5 job never was. I felt alive for the first time in years. The next step was creating a website. I had no idea how to build one, but I knew that I needed an online platform to showcase my services. So, I taught myself basic web design through online tutorials. The first version of my site was rough. It looked like something a high school student would make, but it worked. People could now easily learn about my services, see my testimonials, and sign up for training sessions. It was a game changer. As my business grew, I started noticing trends in my clients' needs. Many of them weren't just interested in getting fit. They wanted to learn about long-term health and lifestyle changes. I decided to expand my services beyond just fitness training. I started offering nutrition coaching, creating workout plans tailored to specific health conditions, and even offering online workshops for small groups. Slowly but surely, I was building something that felt sustainable, something that could truly make an impact on people's lives. At the same time, I started networking with other fitness professionals and influencers. I joined fitness communities online and attended fitness events in my area. I reached out to established fitness brands, asking if they would be interested in partnering for collaborations. Some said no, but others said yes. I worked with a few well-known brands to host online challenges and giveaways, which helped me expand my reach and credibility. Things were going well, but I still had a lot of doubts. Would people continue to pay for my services when there were so many free fitness resources available? Was my business sustainable long-term? I realized that I couldn't just rely on offering services. I needed to scale my business. So, I took a huge leap and invested in creating an online course. Creating the course was by far the most challenging thing I had ever done. It took months of planning, scripting, filming, and editing. There were so many times I wanted to give up, but I kept telling myself that I was building something that would change my life. Finally, after countless hours, I launched my first online course on fitness and nutrition. The first month was a roller coaster. Sales were slow at first, but as I continued to promote the course through social media, email marketing, and partnerships with influencers, the sales started to trickle in. By the third month, I was making more money from my online course than I was from my full-time job. It felt surreal. The dream that had once seemed so far away was now a reality. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. Like any business, I faced challenges. There were competitors who started copying my content, and there were days when I felt overwhelmed by the sheer amount of work that needed to be done. But every time I faced a setback, I reminded myself of why I started in the first place. I wasn't just building a business, I was building a legacy, something that could positively impact others' lives. Fast forward to today, and my business is thriving. I've been able to hire a small team of people to help with marketing, customer support, and content creation. I've expanded my offerings to include personalized fitness gear, memberships, and even fitness retreats. What started as a small Instagram account has grown into a full-fledged business, and I couldn't be more proud of what I've built. But I haven't stopped. I'm constantly thinking about ways to improve, expand, and innovate. I've learned that success doesn't come overnight, and it's never a straight path. There are ups and downs, but what matters is your ability to keep going, to adapt, and to never give up on your dreams. If there's one thing I've learned from this journey, it's that entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. It requires sacrifice, patience, and a relentless belief in yourself. But when you take that leap and put in the work, the rewards are beyond anything you could have imagined. So, to anyone out there reading this who is thinking about starting their own business, just do it. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But if you stay committed and keep working toward your goals, you can create something that will change your life. You just have to start. And trust me, it will be worth it. It was a warm Thursday evening in late September when I sat in the corner of a small coffee shop, watching the rain slide down the window. The day had been a whirlwind of calls, emails, and frantic meetings. My business had reached a point where things felt like they were teetering on the edge, one more push, one more mistake, and it could all fall apart. But at that moment, I wasn't thinking about failure. I was thinking about how far I had come. It hadn't always been this way. The beginning was nothing like this, nothing close to this level of comfort or confidence. There were days when I doubted everything, questioned my decision to start a business, and even wondered if I was good enough. The idea for my business started years ago. I was fresh out of college, working a 9-to-5 job at a marketing firm. It wasn't a bad job. In fact, I was learning a lot about how businesses operate, how products are marketed, and how deals are made. But something was missing. I felt like I wasn't truly contributing to anything that mattered. I wanted to build something of my own, something that had the potential to change lives. The first idea that came to me was incredibly simple, a subscription service for people who were too busy to cook healthy meals. I had spent a few months working late and grabbing takeout, realizing that even though I was busy, I wasn't eating properly. After speaking to some friends, I found out that they felt the same. They all wanted healthy meals but didn't have the time or the expertise to make them themselves. I thought, what if I could solve this problem for them? I didn't have a culinary background or any formal training in nutrition, but I had a knack for problem solving. So, I started researching meal prep, nutrition, and delivery services. I spent countless nights reading articles, watching YouTube videos, and asking people in the industry for advice. The initial response was pretty underwhelming. I would take surveys, asking friends if they'd be willing to pay for a service that delivered healthy meals. Most responses were lukewarm at best. I was convinced that people wanted it, but I wasn't sure how to make them believe it. With very little money in my savings and a mountain of student loan debt, I decided to take the leap. I quit my job and invested everything into starting the business. I rented a small kitchen space, bought a few cooking supplies, and spent my days cooking meals, packaging them, and delivering them by hand. I didn't have a website, a delivery app, or any fancy technology. I was simply putting out flyers, posting on social media, and relying on word of mouth to get my first customers. The first few months were brutal. There were days when I would sit alone in my kitchen, chopping vegetables and feeling like a failure. I wasn't making any real money, and my customer base was growing at a snail's pace. I remember one night in particular, when I had just finished a delivery round. I sat in my car and broke down. I had poured my entire savings into this, and it felt like I was getting nowhere. But I didn't quit. I had made a promise to myself that I would push through, no matter what. Slowly, things started to pick up. I gained a few regular customers, mostly from local gyms and yoga studios. They loved the idea of having fresh, healthy meals delivered to their door. I started to refine my menu, experimenting with different meal plans and adjusting based on feedback. The more I listened to my customers, the better my service became. 6 months in, I was able to hire a part-time employee to help with deliveries. It was a small victory, but it felt huge. For the first time, I wasn't doing everything myself. That gave me a bit of breathing room to think about how I could scale the business. The issue was, I was still barely breaking even. Every extra dollar went into more ingredients, more marketing, and more packaging. I had no cushion to fall back on. At that point, I realized I needed to raise money to grow. So, I started pitching to investors. I had no experience in fundraising, and I was terrified. I had to perfect my pitch, create a business plan, and sell my vision. I was rejected by dozens of investors, but after a few months, I finally found someone willing to give me a chance. They offered me a small investment, just enough to cover a new website and some marketing costs. That was when everything changed. With the investment, I was able to hire more staff, develop an easy-to-use website, and integrate an ordering system. I started running ads on social media and partnering with local health influencers to spread the word. I also started offering different subscription plans to accommodate people with dietary restrictions, gluten-free, vegan, keto, and more. The orders started coming in faster than I could process them. However, scaling up introduced a new set of challenges. As demand grew, so did the complexity. I needed more kitchens, more chefs, more delivery drivers, and more organization. The logistics of running the operation were no longer just a part-time job. It was a full-fledged business, and the stakes were higher than ever. I faced many sleepless nights trying to figure out how to make everything run smoothly. But as the business grew, I started seeing the impact of my work. I received messages from customers telling me how much they appreciated the service, how it had made their lives easier and healthier. One woman even sent me a message saying that my meals had helped her lose 50 pounds. Another customer sent a thank you note saying they had more energy because they weren't eating junk food anymore. These messages were a reminder that my hard work wasn't just about profits, it was about changing lives. Fast forward to today, and my business is thriving. We've expanded into multiple cities, have a team of 50-plus employees, and generate millions in revenue. But it hasn't been easy. There were many moments when I felt like giving up, moments where the stress seemed unbearable. But each time, I remembered why I started: to help people live better lives, to create something meaningful, and to prove to myself that I could build something from scratch. As I sat in that coffee shop, reflecting on my journey, I realized that the struggle was all part of the process. The early days of doubt, the late nights, the sacrifices, none of it was wasted. It had shaped me into the entrepreneur I am today. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time, I'm not afraid of it. I've learned that success doesn't come from avoiding failure, but from embracing it, learning from it, and never giving up. If you're thinking of starting a business, know that it's not going to be easy. But if you're willing to put in the work, stay resilient, and stay true to your vision, you'll find your way. It's a tough road, but one worth traveling. I never thought I'd be telling my story like this. 5 years ago, I was in a tiny studio apartment, scraping by on freelance work, wondering how I'd make ends meet. Today, I run a thriving e-commerce business, and it feels like a lifetime ago that I was in the thick of the struggle. But it's a journey I wouldn't trade for anything. The idea came out of nowhere, as most good ideas do. I was working as a freelance graphic designer, doing some work for a few small businesses and startups. One day, I received an email from a client I'd been working with on and off for months. They asked if I could design a logo for their new product, a set of custom notebooks. It was a small job, but something about it piqued my interest. I didn't think too much about it at first, but the idea of selling custom-designed products stuck with me. I started to research. Custom notebooks were just one of many types of products that people seemed to love. Everyone had a thing for unique stationery, journals, and planners. I thought, what if I could create a brand around this? Something that wasn't just functional but aesthetically pleasing, something people would be proud to own and use every day? That night, I started sketching ideas for the notebooks. I wanted them to be a blend of minimalistic and artistic, a design that felt elevated but still accessible. I didn't have much money, but I had enough saved up from my freelance gigs to purchase a few samples from a supplier I found online. The first round of notebooks I received looked terrible, shoddy materials, poorly printed designs. The whole thing was a disaster. But that didn't stop me. I knew it wasn't perfect, but I saw the potential. I was determined to get it right. I started making connections with other suppliers, testing different materials, and refining the designs. The process took months, but I was persistent. I'd work on the notebooks during the day, and at night, I'd spend hours trying to figure out how to build an online store. I had no business experience, no background in e-commerce, and I wasn't particularly tech-savvy. But I figured, if others can do it, so can I. The website was a challenge. I used a website builder and cobbled together something that looked decent enough for a first attempt. I bought a domain, set up some social media accounts, and began promoting the product online. At first, it was slow. No one knew who I was, and it felt like I was shouting into a void. The first few sales came after weeks of trying, just a few friends and family members who supported me, but that was enough to fuel the fire. I was hooked. Then came the turning point. I ran a flash sale on Instagram. I offered a 20% discount on the notebooks for 24 hours, and the response was better than I could have imagined. It wasn't a huge sale, but it was enough to show me that there was demand. People were genuinely interested in the product, and it wasn't just a pipe dream. I started refining my marketing strategy, focusing more on organic growth rather than paying for ads. I had some wins, but I had just as many setbacks. The notebooks weren't selling as well as I'd hoped, and I was facing a lot of competition. I felt like I was always one step behind and couldn't figure out what was missing. I was about to give up, but then something happened that would change everything. I got an email from a popular lifestyle influencer. She wanted to feature my notebooks on her Instagram. At first, I thought it was a scam, but after a little research, I realized it was legitimate. This influencer had a following of over 200,000 people, and she loved the product. She was offering me a shout-out in exchange for a few free notebooks. I agreed, of course, and sent her the products. The post went live, and the response was overwhelming. Sales skyrocketed overnight. My little e-commerce store went from making a few sales a week to dozens a day. For the first time, I felt like I was onto something. The attention was great, but it was the consistency of sales that really impressed me. People kept coming back, and word of mouth started spreading. But that's when I realized that scaling a business wasn't as simple as getting one viral post. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed with orders, and I had no infrastructure in place to handle the growth. I was still fulfilling orders from my apartment, packaging everything by hand, and I could barely keep up. There were days I'd work 12-hour shifts just to stay on top of things. I had to hire my first employee, a friend of mine who had been helping out for free just to get some relief. After hiring a few more people, I started building a proper fulfillment system. I set up a warehouse space, which was a huge leap for me financially, but it was necessary. With the increased volume, I had to streamline operations, improve inventory management, and make sure that we were delivering on time. It wasn't always smooth sailing. I'd receive angry emails from customers if their products were delayed, and there were days when I felt like I was failing. But I kept reminding myself, this is a part of the process. You learn, you adapt, and you keep going. The next major milestone came when I added a new product line, custom planners. I had customers asking for them constantly, and I realized it was a natural extension of the notebooks. So I invested in creating a line of high-quality planners, with designs that complemented the original notebooks. The planners were a huge hit, and the business really began to grow from there. I wasn't just selling products anymore. I had built a brand that resonated with people who valued design and function. My customers weren't just buyers, they were a part of a community. We engaged on social media, and I took the time to listen to their feedback, making sure I was delivering what they wanted. As the business grew, I learned to delegate more. I hired a marketing team, a customer service team, and a full-time operations manager. I focused more on the bigger picture, from designing new products to building partnerships with other brands and influencers. The challenges never went away, But I found that the more I surrounded myself with people who were smarter and more skilled than I was, the easier it became to tackle them. Today, the business has grown beyond my wildest dreams. We're in major retail stores, have a thriving online presence, and continue to innovate with new products. We've gone from a small side project to a full-fledged brand that people know and love. Looking back, it's incredible how far we've come. I still remember those nights when I was on the edge of giving up. I still remember how many times I doubted myself. But here I am. I'm proof that with persistence, creativity, and a little bit of luck, you can turn an idea into something that changes your life. If I could do it, anyone can. So, to anyone out there thinking about starting their own business, don't wait for the perfect moment. Just start. The rest will follow. I want to share the story of how I went from being broke, living paycheck to paycheck, to building a small online business that now earns 6 figures annually. It wasn't an easy road, and there were times when I questioned if it was even worth it. But looking back, I can now say that the journey was all worth it. Here's how it happened. Growing up, I was never one for academics. I always found school boring and never felt like I was good at anything, except maybe playing video games. My parents were hardworking and believed in traditional paths: get good grades, go to college, get a stable job, and eventually retire with a pension. But I always felt like there had to be more to life than that. I hated the idea of being stuck in a cubicle all day, working for someone else. So, after high school, I decided to take a different path. Instead of going to college, I took a job as a waiter at a local restaurant, hoping that I'd figure things out eventually. For a few years, I was stuck in the same cycle: work, sleep, eat, repeat. I wasn't making a lot of money, but it paid the bills. I had some money saved up, but it never felt like enough. At 24, I realized that if I didn't change something soon, I'd be stuck in this same position for the rest of my life. One day, I was scrolling through Reddit, as I usually did when I was bored, when I came across a post about starting an online business. The poster was talking about how they had built a business from scratch and were now making money in their sleep. That intrigued me. I had always been skeptical about get-rich-quick schemes, but this felt different. It wasn't about some magical shortcut. It was about starting something from nothing and growing it into a real business. So, I decided to take the plunge. I didn't have much money to invest, so I started small. I did a lot of research online, reading blogs, watching YouTube videos, and listening to podcasts about online businesses. I knew I didn't want to start an e-commerce store because I didn't have the capital to buy inventory or deal with shipping. After some more research, I stumbled across the idea of affiliate marketing. It sounded perfect. I could promote other people's products and earn commissions without having to create my own products or deal with logistics. I spent the next few months learning everything I could about affiliate marketing. I was working full-time as a waiter, so I had to dedicate my evenings and weekends to this new venture. I built my first website using a simple WordPress theme, wrote some blog posts about topics I was passionate about, and started promoting affiliate products related to those topics. The first few months were rough. I didn't make a single sale. It felt like I was shouting into the void. But I didn't give up. I kept working on my site every evening, improving my content, experimenting with different marketing strategies, and slowly growing my audience. I also started to learn about SEO, search engine optimization, and how to rank higher in Google search results. Slowly but surely, my website began to get more traffic, and I made my first affiliate sale. It was a small commission, like $5, but it was enough to fuel my fire. I had proof that this could work. Over the next year, I refined my strategy. I learned about email marketing, social media promotion, and how to create valuable content that actually helped people. I built an email list of subscribers who were interested in my niche, and I used that list to promote affiliate products. I also started collaborating with other content creators in my space to cross-promote each other's work. My traffic grew, and so did my earnings. By the time I hit the 2-year mark, my side hustle was earning more than my day job. I was still working as a waiter, but I knew it was only a matter of time before I could quit. The decision to leave my job was terrifying. I was so used to the stability, even though I wasn't making much. But I took the leap. I quit my job, and for the first time in my life, I was in full control of my financial future. I'll admit, the first few months after quitting my job were stressful. I had more time to work on my business, but I was also more aware of the uncertainty that came with it. The bills didn't stop, and I had to make sure my income was consistent. There were days when I felt like I wasn't doing enough. but I kept pushing forward. And slowly, things began to click. My income started growing steadily, and I even added new streams of revenue, like digital products and online courses. At the 3-year mark, I was making 6 figures a year from my online business. I could finally say I had achieved financial freedom. But it wasn't just about the money. I had built something from the ground up, something that I was genuinely proud of. I had become the kind of entrepreneur I had always admired but never thought I could be. Today, my business is still growing. I've expanded into other niches and have a small team helping me manage everything. I'm able to travel, work from anywhere, and spend time with my family, which is the ultimate reward. I'm not saying that running an online business is easy or that it will work for everyone. It's a lot of hard work, especially in the beginning. There are still days when I question whether I'm doing the right thing, but I now have the freedom to make those decisions for myself. Looking back, the biggest lesson I learned from this experience is that success doesn't come overnight. It's a journey filled with setbacks, failures, and doubts, but as long as you keep moving forward, you'll eventually reach your destination. So, if you're thinking about starting your own business or pursuing a side hustle, don't let fear hold you back. Take it one step at a time, learn from your mistakes, and never give up. It might take longer than you think, but it will be worth it. If I could go back and give myself advice, I would say, trust the process, stay consistent, and keep your eye on the long-term goal. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. So, to anyone out there wondering if they should take that first step, just do it. You never know where it might take you. Thanks for reading. I hope my story inspires someone out there to take the plunge and start working toward their own version of success. I was always the kind of person who had big dreams but didn't know where to start. Growing up, I never had a clear idea of what I wanted to do with my life, other than wanting to break free from the predictable 9 to 5 lifestyle. I was constantly looking for something different, something that would make me stand out. But like many people, I had no clue where to begin. This is my story of how I went from being a broke college dropout to launching a successful business from scratch. It all started in 2014 when I was in my sophomore year of college. I was studying business administration because it seemed like the safe choice. Everyone around me kept saying, get a degree, get a stable job, and you'll be set for life. But after a few semesters, I realized I wasn't passionate about the subject. In fact, I was bored out of my mind. The classes felt irrelevant to my goals, and I could already see the path laid out for me. Working in some cubicle, doing mind-numbing work for the next 40 years. That wasn't the life I envisioned for myself. One day, I decided to drop out. I didn't have a concrete plan, but I knew I needed to take a risk and figure things out on my own. My parents were furious, and I had no idea how I was going to make it work. I remember one of the last things my father said to me was, "You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret it for the rest of your life." At the time, those words haunted me, but I decided I had to prove him wrong. I spent the next few months bouncing between odd jobs, waiting tables, doing retail, and working in a warehouse. None of it felt right. I was making just enough to survive, but not enough to make any kind of real impact on my life. One day, while scrolling through social media, I saw a post about a guy who had turned a side hustle into a full-time business by selling custom t-shirts online. It was one of those anyone-can-do-it success stories. I was intrigued. What if I could do the same thing? I had no background in graphic design or apparel, but I had a laptop, a lot of free time, and the willingness to learn. I started doing some research and learned about the concept of print-on-demand services. Essentially, I could design shirts and sell them online without worrying about inventory or upfront costs. I didn't have to be a designer either. There were websites that offered customizable templates, and I could create my own designs using simple tools. After a few weeks of trial and error, I had my first set of designs ready. I launched a store on a platform called Shopify, set up some basic ads on Facebook, and hoped for the best. In the first month, I made $300 in sales. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get me excited. The idea that I could create something out of nothing and sell it to people all over the world was thrilling. But I knew that I had to keep going if I wanted to make this a sustainable business. I reinvested the money into improving my website, designing new products, and learning more about digital marketing. However, the next few months were tough. Sales didn't take off as I had hoped, and I was struggling to break even. The ads weren't converting well, and I felt like I was throwing money into a black hole. I was on the verge of quitting, but something inside me told me to keep pushing. I decided to dive deeper into digital marketing, learning about Facebook and Google ads, email marketing, and SEO. I realized that I needed to understand how to reach the right audience, not just throw ads out there and hope they worked. In 2015, after 6 months of experimenting, things started to click. I optimized my ad campaigns, created a stronger brand identity, and built a loyal following on Instagram. I spent time engaging with customers, responding to messages, and building relationships. It wasn't just about selling products. It was about creating a community of people who shared similar interests. I started offering discounts for referrals and running limited-time promotions to create a sense of urgency. By the end of 2015, my t-shirt business had generated $30,000 in sales. I still remember the moment I hit that first $1,000 month. I couldn't believe it. That was the moment I realized this could become something big. But it wasn't easy. I had to deal with a lot of failures along the way. I lost money on bad ad campaigns, made mistakes with product designs, and even had some customers who weren't happy with the quality of the shirts. But each setback was a learning experience that helped me improve. In 2016, I scaled the business further. I hired a freelance designer to create more unique designs, expanded my product line to include hoodies, mugs, and phone cases, and began outsourcing the fulfillment process to a printing company. This allowed me to focus on marketing and customer acquisition. I learned about influencer marketing and began reaching out to micro-influencers who would promote my products in exchange for free merchandise. This strategy worked wonders and helped me increase my sales exponentially. By the end of 2017, my business was bringing in over $500,000 in revenue. I was working from home, living a lifestyle I had only dreamed of. I had no boss, no set hours, and the freedom to travel whenever I wanted. But with that success came new challenges. I had to manage a growing team, handle customer service, and deal with the stress of running a business full-time. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I had to become more disciplined, learn how to delegate tasks, and become better at managing my time. In 2018, I decided to expand even further by launching a new line of products. Instead of relying solely on print-on-demand, I started manufacturing custom products and working with suppliers directly. This was a huge leap, but it allowed me to increase profit margins and have more control over quality. I also invested in automation tools to help streamline my operations, and I started focusing more on building my personal brand through YouTube and public speaking. As of 2023, my company generates over $5 million in annual revenue. I've been able to hire a talented team, reinvest in the business, and even mentor other aspiring entrepreneurs. But even though I've achieved financial success, the journey has never been about the money. It's about the freedom and flexibility to live life on my own terms, while also helping others do the same. Looking back, I can honestly say that quitting college was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It wasn't an easy path, and there were plenty of times when I wanted to give up. But the key was persistence. I kept learning, kept adapting, and kept believing in myself, even when it seemed like things wouldn't work out. Now, I'm living the life I always wanted, and I hope my story can inspire others to take that first step toward their dreams, no matter how uncertain or daunting it may seem at the beginning. This journey hasn't been a smooth ride, but it's been worth every challenge. So if you're out there wondering if it's too late to start, or if you're unsure if you can make it, just know that the hardest part is starting. The rest will follow if you keep pushing forward. Don't let anyone tell you it's impossible. The only thing that stands between you and success is your willingness to keep going, no matter what. Hey, friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I've always believed that entrepreneurship is a journey that never really ends. It's not just about starting a business and making money. It's about constantly adapting, learning, and evolving in the face of challenges. For the longest time, I didn't understand how real that was until I lived it myself. My name is Alex, and I'm the founder of a now successful tech startup. Looking back, I'm amazed at how far I've come, especially considering where I started. I didn't have a trust fund or a rich family backing me up, and I certainly didn't have any business experience. I was just a guy with a big idea and a stubborn refusal to give up. It all began during my last year of college. I was studying computer science, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Everyone around me seemed to have it all figured out. My classmates had internships lined up with big corporations, and my friends had their career paths mapped out. But I felt like I was standing still. I had no idea what my next step should be, and honestly, I was scared that I was falling behind. One evening, I was browsing the web when I stumbled upon a post on Reddit about a startup that had developed a piece of software for managing team projects. It was sleek, easy to use, and seemed to be gaining a lot of attention. But what struck me the most wasn't the software itself. It was the idea that this small team had created something that was actually helping people. I started thinking, what if I could create something like that? The concept was simple, a tool that could help freelancers and small business owners organize their projects, track progress, and communicate with clients in a seamless way. It seemed like a no-brainer. There was a clear gap in the market, and I was sure I could build something better than what was out there. But of course, it wasn't that simple. I had no business experience, no network, and, most importantly, no money. I didn't even have a proper development environment at the time. I had a single laptop and a small desk in my cramped apartment. I started by writing the code in my free time, often staying up late into the night. But I quickly realized that building a product wasn't just about writing code. It was about understanding your market, your potential customers, and how to position yourself in a competitive space. I spent the next few months learning everything I could about business. I read books, listened to podcasts, and joined online communities for entrepreneurs. I made countless mistakes, but each one taught me something new. One of the biggest lessons I learned was how important it was to get feedback early and often. It's easy to fall into the trap of building something in isolation, thinking it's perfect, only to find out that nobody actually wants it. I decided to test my idea with a small group of freelancers I knew through my college network. I sent out a simple survey, asking them about their pain points with project management tools. The responses were overwhelming. I learned that most of the tools on the market were either too complex or too expensive for small businesses and solo entrepreneurs. People wanted something simple, affordable, and user-friendly. Armed with this knowledge, I started refining my product. I spent every spare minute working on it, often sacrificing my social life and sleep. I still remember the night I first launched the beta version. I was nervous, no, terrified. I knew this was the moment where everything could either take off or fall apart. At first, it was a slow burn. I had a few users, but they were all early adopters who believed in the idea. They gave me valuable feedback, which I used to improve the product. But it wasn't enough. I needed to reach a bigger audience. That's when I decided to take a leap of faith and invest in some marketing. I didn't have much money, so I started with the basics, building an email list, creating content, and engaging with potential customers on social media. I also reached out to influencers in the freelancer space, asking if they would be willing to review my product in exchange for a free subscription. The response was modest at first, but it started to snowball. As more people signed up for the beta, word of mouth began to spread. I also made the decision to offer a free tier, which helped attract more users who were hesitant to pay for something they hadn't tried yet. But even as the user base grew, the challenges didn't stop. I soon realized that customer support was going to be a massive drain on my time and energy. I had to juggle coding, marketing, and responding to user questions. It felt like I was constantly putting out fires. At the same time, I was starting to burn out. The pressure of running a startup alone was intense. There were days when I felt like quitting, when it seemed like nothing was working and I wasn't making any progress. I had a couple of failed features that I poured months into, only to realize they weren't resonating with users. And there were times when I felt utterly alone, with no one to talk to about the stress and the uncertainty I was facing. But quitting wasn't an option. I had already invested too much time, energy, and money into this idea. So, I kept going, one step at a time. I learned how to prioritize better, how to delegate tasks, and most importantly, how to take care of my mental health. I started meditating, exercising more, and making time for friends and family. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary if I was going to keep going. The breakthrough came when I landed a partnership with a larger platform that offered my tool as part of their suite of services for small businesses. That partnership led to a surge in users, and suddenly, I was on the map. It was one of those moments where everything clicked, and I realized that all the late nights, the failures, and the doubts had been worth it. Fast forward to today, and my startup is thriving. We have a small team, a steady stream of revenue, and a loyal customer base. We've expanded our product offerings, and I've learned how to scale the business without sacrificing the quality of what we offer. Looking back, I can't believe how far I've come. There were so many times when I doubted myself, when I felt like I was in over my head. But the key was persistence. There's no magic formula for success, just a lot of hard work, learning from mistakes, and keeping your eye on the long-term vision. I'm proud of what I've built, but I know that this is just the beginning. Entrepreneurship isn't a destination, it's a journey, and I'm excited to see where it takes me next. The journey to entrepreneurship is never a straight line. For me, it all began at the age of 22. I had recently graduated with a degree in marketing from a small college in a small town. My friends were all moving to bigger cities, starting corporate jobs, or going back to school for their master's degrees. And then there was me, stuck in this feeling of stagnation, like I didn't quite belong in the world I was supposed to be part of. I grew up in a middle-class family. We weren't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but we had everything we needed. My parents worked hard, and they instilled in me the value of discipline and perseverance. But they also had one thing that I didn't: security. They had jobs with clear, structured paths that guaranteed them a steady paycheck. I didn't want that. I wanted something different, something that would give me more freedom. And yet, I didn't know how to go about it. My first attempt at entrepreneurship came a year after graduation. I had the bright idea to start an online store selling custom t-shirts. It seemed simple enough. I'd seen ads on Facebook of people running similar businesses, and it looked easy. I had a decent understanding of marketing, and I was confident that I could sell designs that people would love. The problem was I was completely wrong about how easy it would be. I spent my savings, around $5,000, on website design, branding, and a batch of t-shirts that I thought would fly off the shelves. I spent countless nights working on Facebook ads, posting on Instagram, and tweaking my website. But the sales never came. The few shirts that sold were to my friends, and they didn't even pay me the full price. I was losing money, and I was losing hope. After 6 months of burning through my savings and feeling more and more defeated, I had to call it quits. It was a hard decision, but I knew I couldn't keep pushing something that wasn't working. I went back to working part-time at a local coffee shop, trying to regroup and figure out my next move. But the failure didn't discourage me, it lit a fire inside me. I had learned so much from my first venture, mostly through trial and error. I learned that I didn't really understand the customer's needs, that Facebook ads weren't the magic bullet I thought they were, and that marketing wasn't just about getting traffic. It was about creating a product people actually wanted. It was then that I realized I needed to go deeper into understanding not just marketing, but what made a business truly successful. In 2016, I decided to try something completely different. Instead of diving straight into product-based business again, I wanted to focus on the marketing side of things. I had some experience with running digital ads from my first attempt, so I thought I could help other small businesses with their marketing. I started offering freelance digital marketing services to local businesses. I was scrappy. I worked from my bedroom, charging very little at first, just to build a portfolio. I was fortunate enough to land my first real client, a local gym that needed help getting more members through Facebook ads. I didn't know it at the time, but that would be the turning point for me. I worked tirelessly on their campaigns, reading every book, watching every YouTube video, and listening to podcasts I could find about digital marketing. Slowly, results started showing up. The gym's memberships grew, and word began to spread. Over the next few months, more small businesses approached me, and I was soon working with a dozen clients. But here's where things took a real turn. I made a decision to invest heavily in learning and building a system that would help me scale faster. I took a risk and hired a mentor, someone who had already built a multi-million-dollar marketing agency. The price for mentorship wasn't cheap, but I was desperate for guidance. The mentor taught me how to streamline processes, automate campaigns, and better track my results. It was the best investment I could have made. By the end of 2017, I had officially launched my digital marketing agency. It wasn't huge by any means, but I was making a good living. More importantly, I felt like I was finally on the right path. By 2018, I was able to quit my part-time coffee shop job. I focused full-time on growing my agency, and I started hiring a small team to help with the workload. In 2019, my agency hit 6 figures in revenue. I was ecstatic. I had surpassed my own expectations, but I knew that wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted to build something that could scale beyond just me and my small team. So I started focusing on creating more automated systems, outsourcing more work, and leveraging better software tools. This would allow me to focus on growing the business and serving a broader range of clients. Fast forward to 2020, and things were moving faster than I ever imagined. The pandemic had shaken the world up, but it also created opportunities for digital businesses to thrive. I saw a massive surge in demand for digital marketing services, especially from businesses that were struggling to stay afloat during lockdowns. It was then that I doubled down on expanding my agency even further. I expanded our offerings to include SEO, content marketing, and web development, all of which complemented our existing services. I hired more experienced team members, and by 2021, we were working with clients from across the country. The agency was generating consistent seven-figure revenue, and I was finally seeing the fruits of years of hard work, failure, and persistence. Now, in 2025, my company is thriving. We have a diverse set of clients, from e-commerce brands to service businesses. We've built a strong team of talented individuals, and the culture is one of collaboration, innovation, and constant learning. We've gone from being a small local business to a national player in the digital marketing space. But as much as I've achieved, the journey never really ends. There are always new challenges to face and lessons to learn. The road to success wasn't easy, and it still isn't. But I wouldn't trade the lessons I've learned along the way for anything. If there's one thing I've realized, it's that entrepreneurship is less about having all the answers and more about having the perseverance to figure it out, no matter how many times you fail. Looking back, I often think about that first t-shirt business that failed. I had no idea back then that it was just the beginning of a much larger story. Failure isn't the end. It's just a part of the process. I've learned to embrace it, learn from it, and keep moving forward. And to anyone out there thinking about starting their own business, I'd say this. It's going to be hard, you're going to want to give up, and you will make mistakes. But don't quit too soon. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep going. The reward on the other side is worth it. I had always been the kind of person who dreamed big but never quite took the leap. I'd read countless entrepreneur success stories, watched the motivational videos, and spent hours listening to podcasts. But every time I thought about starting my own business, I froze. It wasn't that I didn't have ideas. In fact, I had so many that my brain could never settle on one long enough to take action. There was always something that seemed to hold me back: fear of failure, lack of experience, or just plain self-doubt. But then, in 2017, everything changed. It all started with a random conversation in a local coffee shop that I still can't believe happened. It was an unusually quiet Tuesday morning, and I was sitting alone with a cappuccino, scrolling through my phone and staring blankly at a list of business ideas I had been keeping for months. I was frustrated. Each idea I jotted down seemed either too difficult or too saturated with competition. I was feeling defeated, and I had almost convinced myself that I wasn't cut out for entrepreneurship. That's when an older man, probably in his mid-60s, approached me. He seemed like someone who had lived through a few decades, someone who had probably seen it all. He asked if the seat across from me was taken. I nodded, a bit surprised at the sudden interaction but didn't mind the company. We exchanged pleasantries and talked about the weather for a while, but then he asked me a question that changed everything. What's your dream? What do you want to do with your life? It wasn't the first time I'd been asked that question, but for some reason, the way he asked it felt different. Maybe it was his calm demeanor or the fact that he seemed genuinely interested, but it pushed me to dig deeper than I usually would. I started telling him about my business ideas, my fears, and my frustrations. I told him that I felt stuck and didn't know how to get started. The man listened patiently, nodding along. After a long pause, he finally spoke, and his words have stayed with me ever since. You know, son, I spent most of my life building a career that I thought was safe. I worked for decades in a corporate job, climbing the ladder, getting promoted, and earning a steady paycheck. But when I turned 55, I realized something: I hadn't truly lived. I had been chasing someone else's idea of success. I didn't know what it meant to follow my own passion, to create something that was truly mine. Don't wait until you're older to start chasing your dreams. The best time to start is now. You don't need to have all the answers, but you do need to start. And sometimes, the hardest part is just taking that first step. I sat there, absorbing his words. The man continued to talk about his own experiences, about how he had eventually left his corporate job at 57 and started a small business in a completely different industry. He wasn't rich, but he was happy. He had built something from the ground up, something he could be proud of. He said that the real reward wasn't in the profits, it was in the freedom and the sense of purpose it gave him. By the time our conversation ended, I felt like someone had flipped a switch in my brain. I had been so obsessed with getting everything perfect, with waiting for the right moment, but what he was saying made sense. The right moment never comes. You just have to start. I didn't jump into anything right away, of course. It took me a few weeks to gather my thoughts and figure out what kind of business I wanted to build. I went back to my list of ideas, but this time, instead of focusing on the reasons each one wouldn't work, I started thinking about how I could make them work. I wanted to do something in the tech space, something that combined my love for software and my desire to solve problems for people. That's when I stumbled across a gap in the market. I had always been frustrated by the number of software tools that were either too complex for small business owners or too basic to be useful. The more I thought about it, the more I realized there was an opportunity to create a simple, user-friendly tool that would help small businesses manage their operations without needing a degree in tech. So, I decided to go for it. I used what little savings I had to hire a freelance developer, and I started sketching out the first version of my software. It wasn't easy. In the beginning, I faced so many obstacles: finding the right people to help, managing the development process, and marketing the product with no experience in sales or advertising. I remember feeling overwhelmed more times than I can count. The first few months were a blur of long nights, countless emails, and endless revisions. There were moments when I thought about giving up, when I questioned whether I was wasting my time. But I kept going. There was a small voice inside me that refused to let go, that reminded me of what the man at the coffee shop had said: the best time to start is now. Finally, after nearly 8 months of hard work, I had the first version of my software. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional. I launched it with no real marketing strategy, no email list, and no funding behind me. I just put it out there, hoping someone would see the value in it. To my surprise, people started to sign up. Not a lot, but enough to keep me going. I received feedback from early users who told me how the software was making their lives easier, how it was saving them time and helping them grow their businesses. That feedback was everything. It was what kept me motivated during the tough times. Over the next year, I poured all my energy into improving the product. I learned about marketing, SEO, and customer retention. I invested in online courses, read books, and reached out to other entrepreneurs for advice. Slowly but surely, the business started to grow. By the end of 2019, I had my first 5-figure month in revenue. It wasn't enough to quit my day job, but it was enough to prove to myself that I could make this work. The real turning point came in 2020, when I finally took the plunge and quit my job to work on my business full-time. I was terrified, but I knew it was the right decision. Today, my business is profitable, and I've been able to scale it to a point where I have a small team working with me. It's not a multi-million-dollar empire, but it's mine. I wake up every day excited about what I'm building, and that's something I never thought I'd be able to say. I've learned so much over the years, not just about business, but about myself. I've learned that failure is part of the process, that persistence beats perfection, and that the hardest part of any journey is often just taking the first step. Looking back, I'm grateful for that conversation in the coffee shop. I'm grateful for that man who reminded me that time doesn't wait for anyone. If I hadn't started when I did, I would still be stuck in the same place, dreaming about the life I wanted but never taking the steps to make it happen. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: it's never too late to start. You just have to begin. I've always been the kind of person who couldn't sit still, who believed that there was always a way to make things work, even when it seemed impossible. This is the story of how I built my business from the ground up, starting with nothing but an idea and a ton of hustle. I grew up in a small town in the middle of nowhere. My parents were middle-class, hardworking people who always did their best to provide for me and my 2 younger siblings. We didn't have much, but we made do. We didn't go on vacations or buy expensive clothes, but we never went without the essentials. My parents worked long hours to ensure we were comfortable, but I never took it for granted. In high school, I knew I didn't want to follow the traditional path. Everyone around me was focused on going to college, getting a job, and settling into a predictable life, but I knew deep down that I wanted to create something on my own. I wasn't sure what that something was at the time, but I had a feeling it was out there, waiting for me to find it. After high school, I moved to a bigger city, hoping for a fresh start. I got a job at a small tech startup as an entry-level employee. I didn't know anything about technology, but I was eager to learn. I spent my free time reading books about business, marketing, and entrepreneurship. My manager saw my interest in growing within the company and took me under his wing, showing me the ropes of the business world. The longer I worked there, the more I realized that I wanted to be on the other side of things, not just working for someone else, but creating my own business. During my time at the startup, I saw how the company struggled with customer service and retention. They had great products, but the support team wasn't equipped to handle the growing number of customers. I noticed that customers would often be frustrated by long wait times and unclear communication, which affected the company's reputation. I saw an opportunity to create a better system for managing customer support, one that was more efficient, transparent, and user-friendly. I spent months brainstorming, researching, and learning everything I could about customer service technology. I started developing a plan for my own business, focusing on creating an AI-powered platform that would help businesses streamline their customer support systems. I had no technical background, but I was determined to learn and bring my idea to life. I started teaching myself how to code in my spare time, using online resources and tutorials. It wasn't easy, and there were many nights when I thought about giving up, but I kept pushing forward. I finally built a prototype of the platform, and it was far from perfect, but it worked. The next step was to get feedback from potential customers. I reached out to small businesses, offering them a free trial of the platform in exchange for their thoughts and feedback. The response was better than I expected. Some businesses even offered to pay for the service if I could improve a few key features. With this feedback, I knew I had something worth pursuing. But there was one problem: I had no money to fund the business. I didn't want to take out a loan or borrow money from family and friends, so I started looking for investors. The process was slow, and I faced a lot of rejection. Most investors didn't think my idea was viable, and some even questioned whether AI-powered customer support was something businesses would be interested in. But I didn't give up. Eventually, I found a small group of angel investors who believed in my vision. They provided the initial funding I needed to take my business to the next level. With their support, I hired a small team of developers and designers to help me refine the platform and make it scalable. I spent every waking hour working on the business, pouring my heart and soul into it. Things weren't easy. There were plenty of obstacles along the way. One of the biggest challenges I faced was dealing with technical issues. The platform would crash at the most inconvenient times, and customers would report bugs that I had to fix immediately. There were moments when I thought I was in over my head, and I questioned whether I had what it took to succeed. But I kept going. I reminded myself that I was building something from scratch, and every setback was just part of the process. As the business grew, I began to learn more about what it took to lead a company. It wasn't just about the product anymore. It was about managing a team, making tough decisions, and maintaining a vision. I had to learn how to communicate effectively with my employees, customers, and investors. I also had to learn how to delegate and trust others to handle aspects of the business that I wasn't good at. The first few years were tough. We didn't make much money at first, but we slowly started gaining traction. More businesses signed up for the platform, and word of mouth began to spread. Our customer base grew steadily, and we started receiving positive reviews. It wasn't instant success, but it was progress. I remember the day when we finally reached our first major milestone. A large corporation signed a contract to use our platform. This was the moment I realized we had something big on our hands. It was the validation I needed to keep going, to push harder, and to never give up. From that point forward, things started to move faster. We expanded our team, improved our platform, and attracted more investors. Fast forward to today, and my company is thriving. We're no longer just a small startup, but a recognized leader in the customer service technology space. Our platform is used by thousands of businesses around the world, and we've helped companies of all sizes improve their customer support operations. We've raised additional funding and are now expanding into new markets and developing new products. Looking back, I can hardly believe how far I've come. There were so many times when I thought about quitting, when I felt like giving up was the only option. But I kept going. I stayed focused on my goal, kept pushing through the setbacks, and found ways to learn from my mistakes. I never stopped believing in my vision, and that belief is what got me to where I am today. I'm not saying it was easy, and I'm not saying it's been smooth sailing. The journey has been full of ups and downs, but it's been worth every moment. I've learned so much about business, leadership, and perseverance. And most importantly, I've learned that the road to success is never straight. It's filled with twists and turns, but if you keep moving forward, you'll eventually reach your destination. So to anyone reading this who's thinking about starting their own business or following their dreams, I'll say this: don't give up. It's not going to be easy, but it will be worth it. Keep learning, keep pushing, and keep believing in yourself. The road ahead may be tough, but if you stay focused and never stop hustling, you'll get where you want to go. I'll start this story by saying that I didn't expect to be here. A couple of years ago, I was stuck in a job I hated, barely scraping by, and barely believing in myself. But here I am today, the CEO of a small but thriving business, and it's been a wild ride to get here. I know a lot of people have stories of overcoming adversity, but this one is mine. So let's rewind to a few years ago. I was in my late 20s and working as a marketing coordinator for a tech company. I'm not going to name the company because I'm not trying to get anyone in trouble, but let's just say it was one of those companies that had a great outward image but was a mess on the inside. There were constant layoffs, people leaving, and departments working in silos with little to no communication. I remember feeling like a cog in a machine, just getting by day to day, without any real sense of fulfillment. The salary wasn't great, and the work environment was worse. But I had bills to pay, and it was stable, so I stuck it out. One day, I was sitting in one of those all-hands meetings where the CEO got up to speak about how great the company was doing and how we were all a big part of their vision. Everyone clapped, and then I went back to my desk to drown in a mountain of monotonous tasks. That night, I got home and just sat there, staring at the TV, feeling frustrated. It hit me hard that I had been living like this for years, just getting by. It was the wake-up call I needed. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I couldn't continue like this. So, I started researching. I looked into different industries, freelancing, starting my own business, anything that could give me more freedom. A couple of months of late-night Google searches led me to something that caught my eye: e-commerce. I had always loved shopping online, so the idea of building something that could sell products on the internet seemed both exciting and achievable. I dove headfirst into learning about it. The first major roadblock was the overwhelming amount of information out there. There are thousands of articles, videos, and courses on how to start an e-commerce business. I signed up for a few free courses, and while some were useful, I quickly realized there was no one-size-fits-all answer. That's when I decided to try something bold. I was going to start an online store with no prior experience. My plan was simple: learn as I go. I didn't have a lot of money to invest. I had a small savings cushion, but I wasn't going to dip into it for anything more than essential expenses. I picked a niche that I thought I could get passionate about: eco-friendly products. The idea was simple: sell products that people could feel good about buying, knowing they were good for the planet. After a few months of research, I figured out the basics. I set up a Shopify store, found suppliers, and began building my brand. But it wasn't easy. I hit roadblock after roadblock. The first was finding the right suppliers. I reached out to dozens of companies, most of whom didn't respond, and the ones who did either had terrible products or high minimum order quantities that I couldn't afford. For the first few weeks, I was convinced I was doing something wrong. There were moments when I just wanted to quit, but I reminded myself that this wasn't going to be a quick or easy journey. Once I found a reliable supplier, I faced the next challenge: building traffic to my site. I had zero experience with SEO, Facebook ads, or any of the online marketing strategies I now know so well. I spent countless hours reading articles, watching YouTube tutorials, and experimenting with small ad campaigns. Some were successful, but most of them were complete failures. I remember launching an ad campaign that generated absolutely no sales, and I was crushed. I started to doubt myself again. It wasn't until about 6 months in that I finally got my first sale. I still remember it clearly. It was a Monday afternoon, and I had just posted a blog article about the benefits of eco-friendly living. My phone buzzed, and I saw the email notification: "You've received an order." I couldn't believe it. I checked again. Yup, someone had bought a product from my site. I had made $25. But to me, that $25 felt like $1 million. It wasn't just about the money, it was validation. I had done it. My hard work had paid off. From there, things began to snowball. I kept improving the website, working on my ads, and trying new strategies. Slowly but surely, sales started coming in. But this wasn't the moment I felt like I had made it. In fact, that feeling still hasn't come. I was just starting to understand how much work I had ahead of me. As the months passed, I continued to refine my approach. I learned the ins and outs of e-commerce, how to optimize product pages, how to create high-converting email campaigns, how to use Instagram and Facebook to build a loyal following. I began outsourcing some tasks, like content creation and social media management, so I could focus on scaling the business. I was working more hours than I ever had at my old job, but for the first time, it didn't feel like work. It felt like a mission. I was building something of my own. But the road to success wasn't without its bumps. At one point, I faced a major cash flow issue. I had invested heavily in inventory and marketing, but sales weren't growing as fast as I expected. I found myself struggling to pay for the next batch of products, and I had to borrow money from friends and family just to keep the lights on. It was one of the lowest points in the entire process, but I stuck with it, and over the next few months, things improved. Fast forward to today, and I'm still running that business. It's nowhere near a massive company, but it's sustainable, profitable, and it's something I'm incredibly proud of. I'm not going to say it's easy, far from it. But I've learned so much along the way about persistence, resilience, and the importance of believing in yourself when things get tough. And you know what? Even though I've reached a point where I'm now the boss, I still feel the same nervousness I did in the beginning. I'm always trying new things, constantly tweaking my approach, and learning from my mistakes. The journey is far from over. But that's the beauty of it. It's the unknown that keeps me going. I don't know if this story is inspiring or just another tale of hustle, but if there's one thing I can say to anyone thinking about starting something, anything, it's this. Don't wait for the perfect moment or for everything to align perfectly. Start now. You'll learn more through doing than you ever will by thinking about it. And yes, there will be tough days, but I promise you, the highs will make it all worth it. So if you're reading this and thinking about quitting your job or starting that side hustle, go for it. You've got this. Just take the first step and keep moving forward, no matter how small the progress feels at first. Eventually, the results will come. And when they do, they'll feel like the best thing in the world. I was 22 when I first realized I had to choose between working for someone else or building something on my own. I had just graduated college with a degree in marketing, and like most people my age, I had no clue what I was going to do with my life. My plan was to get a normal job, the one that provides stability, benefits, and a predictable salary. I was set on a path to become a marketing coordinator for some large corporation, maybe in the tech space, where I could work my way up. But then something happened that shifted everything. A friend of mine, Marcus, had been talking about his new side hustle for weeks. He had started a small dropshipping business that sold phone accessories online. The idea was so simple. Find trending products, market them, and ship them directly from the supplier to the customer. No need for inventory, no warehouse, just a laptop and some clever ads. It sounded almost too good to be true. I was skeptical at first. After all, I had heard about dropshipping being a low-margin, high-risk venture, with plenty of people failing. Still, I couldn't shake the thought of how Marcus was working from home, wearing whatever he wanted, and still making money. I had always been fascinated by the idea of entrepreneurship but had never taken the plunge. The idea of being my own boss kept calling me. One evening, after a few beers and some good conversation, Marcus convinced me to give it a try. We agreed that I would start my own store. He promised to help me with the setup, and I'd handle the marketing, since that's what I had studied in college. We chose a niche, luxury watches. I figured it would be easier to market a high-ticket item, and I had always thought watches were cool. At first, everything went smoothly. I designed the website, chose the watch models, and set up my Facebook ads account. Marcus helped me find a supplier, and I spent hours perfecting the product pages and writing ad copy that I thought would work. We launched the store and waited for the sales to roll in. The first few days were uneventful. No orders. A few people clicked the ads, but no one was buying. I won't lie, I was frustrated. I had spent money on ads, designed the website with care, and written what I thought were killer sales pitches. Why weren't people buying? Marcus, being more experienced, told me not to worry. It was just a matter of time. He'd gone through the same struggles at the beginning, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. I dug deep into the analytics, studied successful dropshipping stores, and learned more about conversion rates and customer psychology. I realized I was targeting the wrong audience, and my ads weren't as compelling as I thought. More importantly, I hadn't built any brand trust. Who was going to spend $100 on a luxury watch from a brand that looked like a cheap knockoff? So, I rebranded the store. I changed the name, the logo, the colors, everything. I spent more time on building trust with my potential customers, offering guarantees, and crafting better messaging. I also focused on building a presence on Instagram, posting lifestyle content, and showing off my watches in real-life scenarios. Slowly but surely, I started seeing results. The first sale came in about a month after launching. I'll never forget the feeling of seeing the notification, "You made a sale." I wasn't rich, but that first sale felt like a win, a sign that I was on the right track. Over the next few weeks, I honed my ads, tested new creative, and optimized the website. The sales didn't come in every day, but when they did, It was like winning the lottery. But here's the thing, scaling the business wasn't easy. In fact, it was more challenging than I anticipated. I had to manage customer service, track inventory, negotiate with suppliers, and juggle marketing campaigns, all while working my 9-to-5 job. I would stay up late, trying to fix issues or improve the store, then get up at 7 a.m. for work the next day. It was exhausting. I didn't mind at first because I was passionate about the business, but it didn't take long for burnout to creep in. I was feeling overwhelmed by the constant pressure, and that's when I had to make a tough decision. I couldn't continue working full-time while trying to grow my business at the same time. I decided to quit my 9-to-5 job. I was terrified. Leaving behind a steady paycheck for an uncertain future was not something I took lightly. But I had to give my business a real shot, and I knew that if I didn't go all in, I would always regret it. So, I did it. I quit. And the moment I handed in my resignation, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. It was scary, but it was also exhilarating. Now, I had no safety net. It was sink or swim. Over the next few months, I threw everything I had into the business. I started outsourcing customer service, hiring virtual assistants to handle the day-to-day tasks that were taking up too much of my time. I also worked with more suppliers to diversify my offerings, add new product lines, and keep up with trends. As my store grew, so did the complexity of running it, but I was learning every step of the way. Sales increased steadily, and by year 2, I was making enough to comfortably support myself and reinvest into the business. I was able to hire a small team to help with operations and marketing. With that support, I could focus on growing the brand, building long-term customer loyalty, and creating new marketing strategies. Now, almost 4 years later, my dropshipping business has evolved into a full-fledged e-commerce brand. We've expanded into other product categories, and we now manage our own inventory and warehouse. I've learned a ton along the way, from marketing to logistics to managing a team of people. And while I'm proud of how far I've come, I also know that the journey isn't over. There are still challenges to face, and I'm constantly learning and adapting. I've made plenty of mistakes, and I'm sure I'll make more, but I'm in control of my own destiny now, and that's a feeling I wouldn't trade for anything. If you're thinking about starting your own business, just know that it's not going to be easy, and there will be moments when you'll feel like giving up. But if you're willing to push through those tough times and learn from your mistakes, it's incredibly rewarding. Trust me, if I can go from doubting myself and working a 9-to-5 job to building a business that I'm passionate about, so can you. Just keep going. I'll never forget the day my life changed forever. It was a cold January morning in 2015 when I found myself sitting in the same coffee shop I'd been visiting for years. But this time, I was doing something I had never done before. I was sitting across from a man in his mid-40s, with a calm demeanor and an air of experience about him. His name was Richard, and he was the kind of guy you could imagine making millions without breaking a sweat. I was fresh out of college, struggling to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. My degree in business had felt like the right decision at the time, but as I looked around at the endless sea of applicants for the same jobs, I felt like I was drowning. After a few months of sending out resumes with little to no response, I had hit a wall. That's when I got a call from my old friend Sam, who had recently gotten involved in a tech startup. He told me Richard was looking for a partner, and after a few meetings, I found myself sitting across from him, uncertain of what was going to happen next. Richard was starting a business that revolved around innovative software to help small businesses streamline their operations. He had the vision, the connections, and the money to make it happen, but there was one catch. He needed someone with a fresh perspective and a willingness to get their hands dirty. I didn't have much to offer in terms of experience, but I was hungry and eager to prove myself. We talked for hours that morning, and by the end of the meeting, I had made a decision that would alter the course of my life. I was in. The job wasn't glamorous. I wasn't going to be handed a fancy office or a plush salary. But what Richard offered me was something far more valuable: the opportunity to learn, to fail, and to rise from the ashes stronger than before. The next few months were a blur of late nights, stress, and growth. We spent countless hours brainstorming, coding, designing, and making mistakes. I learned more in those first 6 months than I had in my entire time at university. But as challenging as it was, I loved every minute of it. The thrill of creating something from nothing, the endless possibilities, and the idea that we were truly building something that could change lives. It was intoxicating. But just as things were beginning to fall into place, disaster struck. In mid-2016, the software we had been developing hit a serious snag. The code wasn't working as we had hoped, and the entire project ground to a halt. Richard was devastated, but I was even more so. I had invested everything, my time, energy, and self-worth, into this project, and now it was crumbling before my eyes. At that point, I could have walked away. I could have found another job and moved on, leaving all the stress and disappointment behind me. But that wasn't who I was. I had come too far to let failure win. I put my head down, worked even harder, and learned to fix the issues with the software. It wasn't easy, but slowly, piece by piece, we got it working. By the time 2017 rolled around, we had a working product, and things began to change rapidly. We were getting traction in the market, landing clients, and slowly building a reputation. Our software was simple, effective, and affordable, exactly what small businesses needed. We started seeing real success. The feeling of being able to finally breathe easy was one of the best moments of my life. But success, as I would later learn, doesn't come without its challenges. The growing pains of a startup hit us hard. We didn't have enough employees, the budget was tight, and competition was starting to grow. At times, it felt like we were running a marathon with no finish line in sight. But every time I felt like giving up, I thought about the long nights, the tough moments, and all the hard work we had put in. Quitting wasn't an option. In late 2018, Richard and I decided to take a huge leap. We launched a major update to our software, added a bunch of new features, and focused heavily on marketing. It was a gamble. We didn't have a lot of money to spend on advertising, but we believed in the product. For the first time, we went all in. It was sink or swim. We swam. By 2019, our client base exploded. We had gone from a handful of small business owners to a solid roster of big-name clients. The word started to spread. We were no longer an obscure startup working out of a small office. We were a force to be reckoned with. The company had grown significantly, and I finally felt like we were on the path to long-term success. But success, like I said before, is a double-edged sword. As we grew, so did the pressure. The demands of running a business became even more intense. We had to hire more people, manage budgets, and constantly innovate to stay ahead of competitors. There were days when I wondered if I had made the right decision. It felt like I was constantly putting out fires and never getting ahead. Richard and I started clashing more and more. Our vision for the company was still aligned, but our approaches were different, and the stress of the business was starting to show. In 2020, the pandemic hit, and the world changed in ways no one could have predicted. At first, it felt like the end of everything. Clients were pulling back, budgets were shrinking, and everyone seemed to be in survival mode. But then, something amazing happened. Small businesses, desperate to adapt to the new reality, turned to us for help. We became their lifeline, offering them the tools they needed to survive. We quickly pivoted to offer remote work solutions, and that was the turning point. The following years saw us grow beyond anything I could have imagined. We were now a multi-million-dollar company with clients across the globe. The stress was still there, but the rewards were greater than ever. I had come a long way from the unsure young person I was when I first met Richard. I had grown into a leader, a problem solver, and a creator. The company was a reflection of my journey, filled with triumphs, failures, and everything in between. Today, as I sit in my office overlooking the city, I can't help but think back to that cold January morning in 2015. I had no idea what the future held, but I'm so glad I took that first step. The road wasn't easy. There were times when I wanted to give up, but every challenge along the way made me who I am today. The lessons I've learned, the people I've met, and the experiences I've had are invaluable. So, if you're out there struggling with your own journey, remember this: the path to success is never straight. It's messy, unpredictable, and full of obstacles. But if you keep pushing, keep learning, and keep believing in yourself, you'll get there. Just like I did. And to Richard, wherever he is now, thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. This wouldn't have been possible without you. The journey is still ongoing. There are still obstacles to overcome, challenges to face, and goals to reach. But one thing is for certain: I'm never going to stop. I was in my early 20s, freshly out of college with a degree in marketing, and had just landed my first real job at a mid-tier advertising agency in my city. Life was supposed to be on track, right? That's what everyone around me said. My parents were proud, my friends were envious, and I was thrilled to have a stable paycheck. But underneath all of that excitement, something didn't sit right with me. I was working long hours, often late into the night, helping brands develop their strategies, create content, and manage digital campaigns. But I felt like a cog in a machine. Sure, I was learning and growing, but I was doing it for someone else's dream, not my own. The pay was decent, the benefits were good, but the fire inside me, the one that I had when I first got into marketing, started to flicker out. I began questioning, is this it? It wasn't that I disliked my job. It was that I felt like I had so much more potential than I was tapping into. Everyone around me seemed content with the way things were, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something bigger out there for me. Maybe it was the stories of successful entrepreneurs, the ones who took risks and built empires. Maybe it was the idea of working for myself, being my own boss. Whatever it was, the thought wouldn't leave my mind. I had to give it a shot. At first, the idea of starting my own business seemed absurd. I had no experience running a company, no savings to speak of, and no real plan. What I did have, however, was an idea. A simple one, but an idea nonetheless. My friends had always come to me for advice on how to grow their small businesses online, whether it was building a website, managing social media, or running Facebook ads. I realized that there was a gap in the market for a no-nonsense, affordable, and easy-to-understand digital marketing service for small businesses. So, one evening after work, I decided to take the plunge. I didn't have a big grand vision at the time. I just wanted to test the waters, see if I could make something happen. I registered a simple domain name, smallbizmarketer.com, and spent the next few weeks setting up a basic website. I didn't have any fancy design skills, so it was a very basic landing page, a couple of service descriptions, and a contact form. But it was a start. The next step was even scarier. I had to tell people. I told a couple of friends about the website and asked if they could spread the word. I was lucky enough that one of them had a friend who owned a small coffee shop. He was looking to expand his presence online but had no idea where to start. It was the perfect opportunity for me to test my skills. I offered him a deal. I'll manage your social media and create a few ads for you for free in exchange for a testimonial if it works. He agreed, and I got to work. I spent days researching the coffee shop's target audience, developing a content calendar, and creating Facebook and Instagram ads. I had no real data to back up my decisions, but I worked on instinct, testing things out as I went along. To my surprise, it worked. Not only did his engagement go up, but sales at the shop increased as well. He was thrilled and gave me the glowing testimonial I needed. This small success was the push I needed to go all in on this venture. Now, I had my first client, a bit of social proof, and the confidence to keep moving forward. I didn't quit my job right away. I still needed the steady income to support myself. But I started working nights and weekends on my side hustle, slowly building a client base. I reached out to more small businesses, cold called a few, and leveraged my network to get more clients. It wasn't easy. I had to deal with rejection, frustration, and the constant doubt that comes with starting something new. But each small success kept me going. A few months into it, I landed a client who owned a boutique clothing store. She was looking to launch an online store and needed help with everything, from setting up the website to creating a marketing plan. I jumped at the opportunity, offering to help her build everything from the ground up. This project was different. It required more work, more responsibility, and more expertise than anything I had done before. But I took it on, and it paid off. The website I created for her became one of my best portfolio pieces, and the marketing campaign I designed brought in more customers than she had expected. She was over the moon with the results, and her business began to grow rapidly. The next thing I knew, I had more clients coming in. Word-of-mouth referrals started to pour in, and I was getting busier and busier. Eventually, I had to make a choice, stay at my job or go full-time with my business. I remember the day I quit my job. It wasn't dramatic. I just sent in my resignation and walked out the door. I felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Would it work? Would I make enough money? What if it all fell apart? But deep down, I knew there was no turning back. I had to give it everything I had. The first year as a full-time entrepreneur was both thrilling and terrifying. I was working 12-hour days, juggling multiple clients, and constantly hustling. There were plenty of moments when I doubted myself, especially during the slow months. But I never stopped pushing. I reinvested every penny I made back into the business, whether it was hiring contractors to help with certain tasks or paying for advertising to attract new clients. Slowly but surely, my business began to scale. 3 years later, I had a small team of 4 people working for me, all experts in different areas of digital marketing. We had a solid client base, a consistent income stream, and a reputation for providing excellent service. But more importantly, I had something I had never had before: freedom. I was in control of my own schedule, my own future, and my own success. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Looking back, I realized that my success wasn't built on any one big breakthrough. It was built on small, consistent actions, learning from my mistakes, and never giving up. There were times when I felt like throwing in the towel, but I always kept going. And while I still have a long way to go, I've learned that the journey is just as important as the destination. So, if you're reading this and thinking about starting your own business, just know that it's not going to be easy. There will be challenges, setbacks, and moments of self-doubt. But if you keep pushing, keep learning, and keep going, it's possible. I'm living proof of that. Now, I look back at the young version of myself, the one who had no idea what he was doing but took that first leap anyway, and I'm proud. I might not have had the perfect plan, but I had the determination to see it through. And if I can do it, so can you. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.